It happened in broad daylight. Nigel Farage, the master of political theatre, the man who thrives on controversy and confrontation, tore into Keir Starmer with the kind of brutal bluntness only he can deliver. With cameras rolling and headlines waiting to explode, Farage issued a command that echoed across Britain. Back down now. This was no polite disagreement. This was no Westminster squabble hidden in committee rooms. This was a public demolition, raw, humiliating, and perfectly timed to expose the Prime Minister's weakness just months before Britain heads to the polls in the local elections. Farage didn't just attack. He dominated. He cut through the grey, lifeless aura that surrounds Starmer and replaced it with fire, energy, and confrontation. And in that moment, Starmer looked like what critics have long accused him of being. A man utterly unprepared to stand toe-to-toe with real fighters, a cautious lawyer drowning on a stage built for warriors. This moment matters, because the May local elections are not just another vote. They are the battleground that could define Starmer's legacy, expose his failures, and perhaps even decide his political future. And Farage knows it. That's why his words struck so hard, so fast, and so deep. Let's unravel what happened, and why these three pillars of Starmer's humiliation reveal a prime minister on the verge of collapse. For years, Nigel Farage has been the thorn in the side of Britain's political elite. Whether you admire him or despise him, one fact is undeniable. Farage knows how to command attention. He speaks the language of confrontation. He thrives on provocation. And when he set his sights on Starmer, it was carnage waiting to happen. Farage's words were simple, but devastating. Back down now. Three words that sliced through Starmer's image like a blade. It wasn't just an insult. It was an order, a command thrown in the face of a sitting prime minister. And how did Starmer respond? With silence, with hesitation, with the look of a man who had been caught off guard yet again. Cameras captured it, commentators replayed it. Social media turned it into a meme within minutes. Farage exposed the very thing Starmer tries desperately to hide: his inability to respond under pressure. In Parliament, he survives by reading carefully rehearsed scripts. In interviews, he clings to talking points. But when confronted by raw populist firepower, his armor crumbles. He looks uncomfortable, unprepared, unconvincing. Farage didn't need a long speech. He didn't need to outline policy. His attack worked because it was theatre. And in politics, theatre is power. In those three words, Farage projected dominance. Starmer projected weakness. And that contrast will linger as Britain heads into the local elections. The May local elections are not just about councils and mayors. They are about momentum. They are about public trust. They are about whether Labour's grip on power is as strong as it looks, or whether it is already beginning to slip. Inside Labour, insiders whisper about fears. Councillors grumble that the leadership has failed to energise the base. Campaign volunteers complain of apathy. Voters in key swing areas tell pollsters they feel let down, that Starmer has not delivered the change he promised. These elections will test Starmer's ability to hold together the fragile coalition that brought Labour back to power. And right now, the signs are bleak. Polls suggest Labour could lose ground in areas where it should be unshakable. Disillusioned voters, frustrated by broken promises on the NHS, housing, and cost of living, may stay home or turn elsewhere. And if Labour stumbles, the backlash inside the party will be ferocious. MPs already restless will sharpen their knives. Councillors, the very backbone of the party machine, will demand answers. The narrative will write itself. Starmer is failing not just at the national level, but at the local one too. Farage knows this. That's why his attack came now. He senses blood in the water. He knows that humiliating Starmer before the local elections is more than just personal. It is strategic. It weakens Labour's confidence, rattles its ground game, and sets the stage for bigger victories down the line. For Starmer, these elections are make or break. Victory will be seen as expected. Anything less will be seen as failure. And under that pressure, with Farage breathing down his neck, the Prime Minister looks weaker by the day. Farage is not just a man with words. He is a man with a movement. Reform UK, once dismissed as a fringe party, is now surging in the polls. And its rise is perhaps the most dangerous threat Starmer faces. Across working-class communities once loyal to Labour, Reform is making gains. These are the voters who feel betrayed. By Brexit betrayals, by stagnant wages, by promises that never materialise. Starmer's cautious centrism has left them cold. And into that vacuum steps Farage, with his populist fire, his unfiltered rhetoric, his willingness to say what others will not. Polls show Reform cutting into both Conservative and Labour bases. But the damage to Labour is especially damning. In areas once called Labour's Red Wall, Reform is rising as the voice of anger, frustration, and betrayal. Where Starmer offers polished, lawyerly speeches, Farage offers raw passion. Where Starmer avoids controversy, Farage embraces it. The contrast is magnetic, and the numbers don't lie. Reform UK is no longer a nuisance. It is a disruptor. It is changing the electoral map. It is forcing Starmer to defend areas that should be safe, draining resources, and fracturing the very coalition Labour needs to survive. This is why Farage's "back down now" was so devastating. It was not just a personal jab. It was the voice of a rising movement telling the Prime Minister of Britain that his time is running out, and millions of voters nodded in agreement. Taken together, these three threads, the direct challenge, the looming election pressure, and the rise of Reform, UK, weave a picture of a Prime Minister in deep crisis. Starmer stands at the centre of a storm. He cannot command respect on the stage. He cannot energize his party for the battles ahead. He cannot hold back the populist wave that Farage is riding into Britain's political bloodstream. And so the question is no longer whether he can survive the next local elections. The question is whether he can survive the humiliation, the perception of weakness, the growing belief that he is already finished. Nigel Farage destroyed Keir Starmer, not with policy papers, not with detailed arguments, but with theatre, timing, and truth. And as May approaches, the echo of those three words, "back down now," will haunt every step Starmer takes, every speech he makes, and every desperate attempt to convince Britain he is still in control. Because the reality is clear. He is not. Nigel Farage's devastating attack on Keir Starmer was not an isolated humiliation. It was the latest crack in a facade that has been crumbling for months. For a man who rose to power promising integrity, vision, and boldness, Starmer now finds himself branded something far more damaging. Boring, uninspiring, untrustworthy, and, worst of all, irrelevant. Farage's fiery "back down now" exposed the Prime Minister's fragility, but the deeper collapse comes from within. The way Starmer runs Britain like a sterile office, his betrayal of the NHS promises that won him trust, and his growing disconnect from the very public that once carried him into Downing Street. The truth is clear. Britain doesn't just see a weak leader. It sees a man who has become the manager of national decline, a betrayer of public trust, and a politician increasingly despised by the people he claims to represent. In politics, perception is everything. Some leaders project vision, others command authority. Starmer projects paperwork. He's not the fiery orator who stirs a crowd. He's not the bold strategist who bends history. He is the backroom manager. Cautious, calculating, clinical, and utterly devoid of charisma. Critics compare him to a solicitor rehearsing legal arguments, not a statesman shaping destiny. His speeches sound less like rallying cries for a nation and more like courtroom depositions stripped of life. Every line feels rehearsed, every pause unnatural, every sentence tested by pollsters and advisors before leaving his lips. This image of grey bureaucracy has become his curse. Commentators have branded him the manager of decline. Voters call him boring. Even Labour activists whisper that he's not inspiring but draining, not leading but simply administering Britain's decay. And in politics, dullness is not harmless, it is deadly. Because where Starmer hesitates, others dominate. Farage thrives in the theatre of politics. He speaks with passion, even rage, while Starmer shuffles through sound bites. At a time when the people crave conviction, they see in Starmer only calculation. This is why Farage's attack struck so hard. His raw command of the stage only highlighted Starmer's lifelessness. In the clash between fire and grey, the grey will always lose, and Starmer is drowning in it. If one institution embodies Britain's national pride, it is the National Health Service. The NHS is not just a policy issue. It is a lifeline. It is the moral foundation of modern Britain. And it is collapsing. When Starmer sought power, he promised to save it. He vowed to restore funding, cut waiting lists, and deliver dignity back to doctors, nurses, and patients. He spoke of the NHS as a sacred trust, one Labour would always protect. For voters, this pledge mattered. It was personal. Millions placed their hope in it. But in office, Starmer betrayed them. Instead of bold rescue, he offered endless reviews and consultations. Waiting lists have soared to record highs. Hospitals remain overwhelmed. Staff shortages worsen. Ambulances queue outside A&E departments as patients wait in agony. Doctors strike. Nurses strike. Junior staff burn out. Families wait months for operations, years for specialist referrals. And through it all, Starmer repeats the same empty lines. We are reviewing. We are assessing. We are making progress. It is betrayal in its purest form. Not because he failed to fix a broken system overnight, but because he pretended he would and then abandoned the fight. He presented himself as the defender of the NHS and now presides over its slow collapse. Farage knew this. That's why he hammered the point. Because attacking Starmer on the NHS is not just political strategy. It is emotional dynamite. It exposes the chasm between the promises Labour made and the suffering people endure. And when the public sees ambulances waiting, when they hear of deaths caused by delays, they remember the promises Starmer made. And they call him a liar. For a Prime Minister who built his reputation on trust and integrity, this is the most devastating blow of all. Because once the people believe you have betrayed them on the NHS, you can never recover. Perhaps the most catastrophic failure of all is the widening gap between Starmer and the people. Polls reveal the uncomfortable truth. Labour may hold electoral advantage, but Starmer himself is deeply unpopular. Words like boring, uninspiring, and weak dominate descriptions of him. His approval ratings sink even as his party's numbers hold. The people support Labour not because they believe in Starmer, but because they are desperate to avoid the alternative. This disconnect is everywhere. Town halls report apathy. Councillors say canvassers are met with shrugs, not enthusiasm. Younger voters, once filled with hope, describe feeling betrayed. Working-class communities, the backbone of Labour's historic victories, feel abandoned. Starmer speaks of restoring trust, yet the public doesn't trust him. They see his U-turns, his broken promises, his cautious centrism. They see a man who avoids controversy rather than confronting it, and they feel cheated. On social media, the anger is sharper still. Memes mock his dullness. Hashtags call him a coward. Videos of his robotic speeches circulate with captions like, "Does this man even believe what he's saying?" And then came Farage. With one fiery outburst, he became the voice of that disillusionment. His populist language echoed what millions already feel. That Starmer is not one of them. That he does not understand their pain. That he hides behind bureaucracy while ordinary people suffer. This is the danger. Once the public feels you are disconnected from their lives, you are finished. A leader without connection is a leader without power. And Keir Starmer is rapidly becoming the most disconnected Prime Minister in modern history. Taken together, these three failures are lethal. The image of a backroom manager drains his charisma. The betrayal of the NHS destroys his trust. The growing disconnect with the public erodes his authority. Farage's attack was not just a moment of humiliation. It was the spark that revealed the deeper rot. Because the truth is, Starmer's collapse is not about one debate, one insult, or one clash. It is systemic. It is the product of weakness, betrayal, and alienation. Britain is heading into the local elections not with a prime minister leading the charge, but with one desperately clinging to control. A leader branded boring, a leader accused of betrayal, a leader despised by the people. And the haunting question grows louder with every passing day. How long before Keir Starmer is not just humiliated but finished? The scene is already set. Farage has delivered the devastating challenge. The local elections loom like a storm cloud. Reform UK is surging. And Starmer has been branded a dull backroom manager who betrayed the NHS and lost the people. But the humiliation does not stop there. Because beneath the surface of government and media spin, a much darker truth is emerging. Keir Starmer is not just unpopular. He's not just uninspiring. He is losing control. Inside his own party, rebellion brews. Among the public, Nigel Farage has seized the mantle of populist authenticity. And across Britain, the perception has hardened. This Prime Minister is not leading the country. He is clinging to office as it collapses around him. The revolt is real. The authority is gone, and the reckoning is inevitable. It is often said that Labour eats its own leaders alive. And Keir Starmer, once hailed as the man who could save the party, is beginning to taste that same bitter fate. Behind closed doors, MPs mutter openly about his failures. Councillors preparing for local elections express panic that his uninspiring leadership will cost them seats. Grassroots activists, the lifeblood of Labour campaigning, admit they are demoralised, drained, and increasingly hostile to the man at the top. The signs of revolt are everywhere. In Westminster corridors, whispers grow louder about his inability to inspire. Senior Labour figures complain privately that he governs through fear and discipline, not loyalty or passion. Shadow ministers describe a suffocating environment where every word is policed, every speech scripted, every move second-guessed by an army of advisors. Starmer presents this as discipline. Critics call it dictatorship. And when the pressure of elections mounts, this brittle control begins to crack. Already, leaks have emerged of MPs warning the leadership that the base is restless. Already, reports surface of councillors refusing to defend Starmer on the doorstep. It is a familiar pattern in British politics. Once the aura of authority fades, once the knives are sharpened, there is no going back. And Starmer's aura has not just faded, it has shattered. He is now a leader tolerated by his party, not respected by it. A figurehead carried along by Labour's numbers, not its loyalty. Nigel Farage, ever the opportunist, senses this weakness. His attack was not just aimed at Starmer the man, but at Labour the machine. He knows a divided party cannot fight a united movement, and as Reform UK rises, Labour looks less like a government in control and more like a fractured coalition staggering toward crisis. In politics, contrasts matter. And the contrast between Keir Starmer and Nigel Farage could not be sharper. Starmer is measured, grey, cautious, scripted. Farage is raw, fiery, unapologetic. Starmer calculates every word. Farage speaks as though he is the voice of the pub, the market, the high street. This is why Farage resonates with people. He projects authenticity, however controversial. He says what others will not. He thrives on confrontation. And in a Britain tired of technocrats and career politicians, Farage appears to millions as the only leader who actually speaks their language. In working-class communities once loyal to Labour, this contrast is deadly. Where Starmer delivers dry speeches about pragmatism, Farage thunders about betrayal. Where Starmer hesitates, Farage punches. Where Starmer looks like an administrator, Farage looks like a fighter. And that is why Reform UK is surging. It is not because Farage has a detailed policy programme, he rarely does. It is because he embodies anger, frustration and passion. He reflects what millions feel in their bones, that Britain has been let down, that leaders like Starmer are out of touch, that politics has become theatre without truth. This is why Farage's "back down now" struck so deeply. It was not just Nigel speaking, it was millions of Britons speaking through him. It was the working class shouting at a prime minister they feel has betrayed them. It was the echo of frustration that Starmer cannot silence. The danger for Labour is clear. While Starmer speaks at the people, Farage speaks for them. And in an era where trust in politics is collapsing, authenticity is power. Starmer has none. Farage has it in abundance. Authority is the currency of leadership. Without it, a prime minister is nothing more than a caretaker. And Keir Starmer has lost his in Parliament, his weakness is visible weekly. Opposition MPs mock him without fear. Even backbenchers within his own party feel emboldened to grumble. When he speaks, the chamber does not fall silent. It scoffs. When he makes promises, the media does not cheer. It questions. He looks less like a man in control and more like a man desperately clinging to a script. Within Labour, his authority is brittle. MPs obey not because they believe, but because they fear punishment. Whips enforce silence, advisors micromanage dissent. But such authority is paper thin. Once cracks appear, once rebels smell blood, it shatters quickly. And in whispers, the cracks are already widening. Among the public, his authority has collapsed almost completely. Voters describe him not as a leader, but as a placeholder. Poll after poll shows personal unpopularity, even as Labour maintains an advantage. It is the worst possible combination. A party that wins by inertia, led by a man the people neither like nor trust. And internationally, Starmer is irrelevant. At summits, he is not seen as a statesman, but as a background figure. While other leaders dominate headlines, Britain under Starmer is absent from the global stage. The country once famed for punching above its weight is now seen as passive, its prime minister a grey blur in photo ops. Then came Nigel Farage. Then came the command, the humiliation, the theatre. Back down now. 3 words that shattered what little authority Starmer had left. Because once you are humiliated in public, once your opponents define you as weak, the perception hardens. And perception is reality. Starmer's authority is gone. In Parliament, in his party, in the public eye, on the world stage, a prime minister who cannot command respect is not a prime minister at all. He is a caretaker, waiting for the inevitable end. And so we reach the inevitable conclusion. The revolt inside Labour grows louder. The people turn to Farage as the voice of authenticity. The authority of the Prime Minister collapses, and the reckoning begins. This is no longer about one clash, one insult, or one election. It is about the end of a political illusion. For years, Starmer has tried to present himself as the steady hand, the man of integrity, the safe choice after years of conservative chaos. But in the cold light of reality, that illusion has evaporated. He is not steady. He is stagnant. He's not a man of integrity. He is a man of hypocrisy. He is not the safe choice. He is the weak one. Farage's attack was devastating because it crystallized what Britain already knew. Starmer is not a leader. He is an administrator. He is not a fighter. He is a placeholder. He is not respected. He is ridiculed. And now, with the local elections looming, his humiliation is complete. If Labour underperforms, the revolt will erupt into open war. If Reform UK continues to surge, his base will crumble further. And if Farage continues to dominate the narrative, Starmer will fade into irrelevance faster than any prime minister before him. This is the reckoning. The collapse of a leader who never truly led. The downfall of a man who mistook caution for strength. The humiliation of a prime minister destroyed not by scandal, not by crisis, but by weakness. Live, in full view of the nation. When history writes its judgment, Keir Starmer will not be remembered as the man who saved Britain. He will be remembered as the man who managed its decline, the man who betrayed its health service, the man who disconnected from its people, the man who could not withstand the fire of populism. And above all, he will be remembered as the Prime Minister destroyed, not by an election, not by a scandal, but by the raw, unfiltered challenge of Nigel Farage. Back down now, 3 words that ended the illusion. 3 words that sealed the humiliation. 3 words that will haunt Keir Starmer's legacy forever.